Let's continue then taking stock of Athol Fugard's contributions, bringing now veteran actor Sello Maake KaNcube, who joins us now via our video link. Of course, Mr. Sello Maake KaNcube, a storyteller in his own right. Great to see you, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time for us here on the SABC News channel. You know, if the work didn't speak for itself, that tribute from the president really does bear testament to the contributions that have been made by Athol Fugard, with pieces that were written decades ago, but still find such deep resonance today.
Ayanda, thank you very much for the opportunity to, pay tribute to this giant of South African theatre. And let me greet your viewers as well. You know, the amazing thing is that in my program this year of the works that I am going to do, I have actually I have Master Harold and the Boys, which I will be presenting at Theatre on the Square in June. It is such an honor, and I remember my very first contact with Athol Fugard's work was in my early years as a teenager, as I was getting interested in theatre. And I came across a book with 3 of his plays, which were the 2 plays that he devised with John Carney and Winston Jonah, Dr. John Carney, I should say, OBE. And also, and those 2 plays were Caesar Bands is Dead and The Island, and Statements After an Immorality Act. And he was such an inspiration that even the very first play that I wrote, called Deliga Jele at the age of 19, was so much inspired by the short, quick interactions that he had, with in his character, in the characters that he wrote. But yes, we have lost a giant, and somebody who also was a very good friend to my mentor, Barney Simon. In fact, this recently I just started reading. Revisiting, actually, not even reading, but revisiting a book that Mary Benson had written about Barney Simon and Athol Fugard. And he quotes, she writes in the book that Athol Fugard regarded Barney as his kindred spirit in the telling of South African stories.
Sure. And Athol Fugard in many respects being described as a Shakespeare of South Africa. And that speaks to essentially his ability to convey really complex issues of the day without even, for example, in our case, having to refer to the laws of apartheid. It's just by engaging with the relationships of the characters that you'd be able to ascertain the injustice and the dehumanizing nature of the regime. That takes an incredible amount of skill that I think many people, of course, are going to miss when it comes to the kind of work that South African playwrights are able to produce.
Yes, but I would say that is something that she has left in some of us. And also even through Barney, because he was such a very close friend of Barney Simon. And I remember, when I was interacting with Barney, and one of the, things that he taught me, he said, when you write a story, don't make a statement. You know what I mean? Explain the statement. And he made, like a very simple example of, here's a man who wakes up early in the morning, is going to work. And as he leaves, the wife says, hey, please don't forget to buy meat, seshebo, when you come back and it's on a Friday. And as the father is leaving, also the children say, hey, Papa, buy me this. Papa, please buy me this. And then the man goes to work. But on his way to work, then he gets arrested for a passbook, And then the next thing, at home, the wife is waiting. Upege Papa, he's just cooked pap. He's waiting for meat to be, to come through with him. And then the children also are standing, waiting for Papa to bring them the sweets that he had promised. And, that simple explanation that don't make a statement, but tell a story, that makes a statement, because with that, little scenario, it was just saying the passbook is horrible. And instead of saying the passbook is horrible, you tell that little story. So that kind of approach to telling stories and in its simplicity has been departed to many of us.
Yeah, absolutely. What I found interesting, it was also his approach to building these stories. I mean, a lot of it was through a process called workshopping the plays, where you bring in people who have the lived experience to help essentially put words to those experiences. And I think, of course, several of his works come from that process that he embarked upon with Dr. John Kani and the late Winston Nchona, at a time when it was incredibly difficult to do so. And I think that shouldn't be lost to us. It actually wasn't allowed for, a white man to be working in such an intimate way with black counterparts.
Exactly, and also even going into the black spaces. I mean, the plays that that he first did, I think Nongoko and No Good Friday. I mean, he did maybe he was not going, but I'm sure he was visiting, Sophia Town, and even though they were rehearsing at at the Doke House, but one thing that I found fascinating personally is how basically they were exploring acting at a very interesting, with a very interesting approach. I mean, some of us, when we grew up on Gibson Kente, and Gibson Kente had a very stylized approach to acting. And it is basically now, as I'm revisiting the works that he has done, that you realize that when he did these productions that he wrote in the late 50s and working with the black actors in Sophia Town, I mean, the likes of the late Zakes Mutkai and the still living and Saul Rachilo, these guys were exploring acting and using method acting, using reading Stanislavski. And this is something that is basically not known to many of us, that black actors basically had been grappling with method acting for as far back as in the 50s. And I think people like Athol Fugard and many others, even Barney Simon, they were bringing this kind of approach to acting at a time when it was not even fashionable.
Yeah, absolutely. What is also poignant, of course, is the activism that comes out of the work itself. You could see a lot of it was a protest. And I suppose, typically when somebody passes away, you kind of take stock of what of those lessons we're able to carry through. And I suppose as an actor yourself, a question you must be grappling with is the kind of activism that actors today are embarking on and the message, I suppose, that comes with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, the theater that was produced then, it was called, protest theater, or when you want to sound sophistication, you say agitprop, agitational propaganda. The work that, Sizwe Banti's Dead was a protest almost, against the pass book. The island was telling a story about people who were kept in prison, and I think bringing awareness to the incarceration of our leaders in the island. And also, some of the works that for instance that that I can think of that were of that time and of that ilk. For instance, a person like Brani Simon produced an amazing production with Mbongeni Ngema and the late Mbongeni Ngema and Percy Mtoa, and they produced Woza Albert. And Woza Albert is based on a very simple premise, and that is how they created theater out of simplicity. In fact, the book that I'm reading, it's called Best Stage, Few Props, and Great Theater. And you look at productions like Woza Albert, which was just two actors, two tea chest boxes, and a rail of few clothes hanging on it. But it told a story, based on a simple premise. What will happen if Jesus Christ came back to South Africa? And a beautifully, nicely woven narrative is actually told, by the two actors as they reenact the trials of apartheid, of pass books, and getting arrested for pass book, but also in it now, the dream that South Africans, black South Africans had of what they would wish to see happen. And in that production, what happens is the people actually tell of their aspiration to the character called Morena, which is modeled around Jesus Christ, of their wishes. And it's a very nicely woven, fantastical story, of that speculation, what will happen if Jesus Christ came to South Africa.
It's become a timeless piece for scholars of theatre. And I've seen it before, actually. It's amazing, the use of the body more than anything else to really transform the audience and take them to a place outside of where they're seated. And I suppose as we round off your own contributions, Mr. Sello Maake KaNcube, I wonder if there's a character from any of Athol Fugard's work that has stayed with you, given just how poignant a lot of those plays have become. And it might be for whatever reason. Maybe you found it easy to take on, you found it relatable, you found it to be a stroke of genius, but nonetheless, it stayed with you throughout all these years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't done any plays of Athol Fugard, except that now I'm going to embarking on Master Harold and the Boys, and that I am doing basically paying homage to Zakes Mokai, who first did the character, but also beyond that, it is also walking in the footsteps of our theatre giant, Dr. John Kani, because Dr. John has been such an inspiration to my life. And I basically just started, I think, 2 years ago when I did it, basically, I think, to walk in his footsteps. And I did a production of Nothing But the Truth, which was a play that he wrote. And then now my follow-up in his footsteps is doing Master Harold and the Boys and playing the character of Sam. And apparently Sam is such a very important character, even in Athol Fugard's life. So basically, at the moment, I'm just starting my journeys in basically getting to do the works that Athol Fugard has written, but also following in the footsteps and riding on the shoulders of the giants that were there before me.
All right, and of course, what a journey it can become. Sello Maake KaNcube, thanks for taking the time to help us remember this giant in South African theatre. Remembered, of course, not only here at home, but around the world. Once again, Sello Maake KaNcube, a veteran actor and storyteller in his own right. We appreciate the insights indeed.